A legacy is not built in peace. It is born in fire, silence, and the weight of blood that refuses to fade. The Yellowstone universe opens its darkest chapter yet, stepping into 1969, where the land is still wild, but the hearts of men are even wilder. A young John Dutton II stands at the edge of a destiny he never asked for, carrying a name that already feels too heavy for his shoulders. The ranch is not just land anymore. It is a battlefield of memory, pride, and survival. And somewhere in the distance, the echo of Spencer Dutton still lingers like a storm that never fully left. This is not just a story of a ranch. This is the beginning of a war between family and fate. The year is 1969. The world outside is changing fast, but in Montana, time feels stuck in place. The Dutton Ranch stands strong on the surface, but inside, it is fractured by loss, silence, and unfinished grief. John Dutton II is no longer a child. He is now forced into a role he never trained for, carrying the responsibility of a name that the land itself seems to recognize more than he does. Every fence he repairs, every decision he makes, feels like he is stepping into footsteps carved long before his birth. But the real shadow over the ranch is not just inheritance. It is Spencer Dutton. Spencer is older now, carrying years of pain that never healed. A man who once survived wars, oceans, and impossible journeys now finds himself trapped in something far more brutal: time. The ranch no longer feels like home to him. It feels like a reminder of everything he lost. Alex is gone, but her memory is not. It follows him in every silence, in every breath he takes before speaking. In every night he stares at the land and wonders what peace was supposed to feel like. Between Spencer and John Dutton II, there is no open hatred, but there is distance. A quiet, growing tension that neither of them knows how to break. John sees Spencer as a legend, a man shaped by stories too big to believe. But Spencer sees John as the future he never asked to protect. And that difference slowly becomes the heart of everything that is about to break. The ranch itself begins to feel different too. Neighboring lands are no longer just neighbors. They are competitors, enemies waiting for weakness. Every handshake hides intention. Every agreement carries a price. The Dutton name still commands respect, but respect is no longer enough to survive. Power is shifting in Montana, and the ranch is standing in the center of it all like a target that refuses to move. And then comes the silence about Elizabeth and Jack's line returning closer to Montana. Whispers begin to grow that old family ties are not as buried as they once believed. If they return, they will not come quietly. They will come with questions. And questions in the Dutton world are dangerous, because every question leads to truth, and every truth leads to conflict. John Dutton II feels it first, a strange pressure in the air, like the land itself is holding its breath. He begins to notice the way Spencer looks at the horizon for too long, like he is waiting for something to arrive or end. He starts to realize that the ranch is not just passing from one generation to another. It is splitting between them. And in the middle of all this, there is something even more fragile. A bond that has not yet been tested. A connection between uncle and nephew, between past and future, between a man who has seen everything and a boy who is about to see too much. Spencer finally speaks more in these days, but his words are not light. They carry weight, stories of survival, stories of love lost, stories of decisions that cannot be undone. John listens, but he does not always understand. Not yet. Because some lessons are not meant to be understood, only lived. And as the ranch prepares for a future it cannot clearly see, one truth becomes undeniable. 1969 is not the beginning of peace. It is the beginning of consequence. The tension inside the Dutton Ranch does not stay silent for long. It begins to grow in the smallest moments, in conversations that end too quickly, in glances that last too long, and in decisions that feel heavier than they should. John Dutton II starts to realize that leading this land is not about strength alone. It is about control. And control is slipping through his fingers faster than he expected. Spencer Dutton becomes more withdrawn. The weight of everything he has lived through is now settling into his bones. The man who once fought the world now finds himself fighting memory. Every corner of the ranch reminds him of Alex, and every sunrise feels like a reminder that she is not there to see it. He does not speak of it often, but when he does, the silence afterward becomes louder than his words. John watches him closely, not out of fear, but out of confusion. He cannot understand how someone so strong can look so lost. But Spencer is not just a man anymore. He is a living history, a bridge between what the Dutton Ranch was and what it is becoming. And bridges, no matter how strong, are always under pressure from both sides. Outside the ranch, the world of Montana is shifting. Other ranches are no longer staying in their place. Land disputes are becoming more direct, more aggressive. Agreements that once held peace are now being questioned. The Dutton name still carries weight, but weight alone does not stop ambition. It only delays it. Whispers begin spreading about land ownership, about old promises, about boundaries that were never properly settled. Some families begin testing the Duttons, pushing small limits to see how far they can go. At first, it looks like coincidence. Then it starts to feel intentional. John Dutton II is forced to respond, but every response pulls him deeper into a role he never asked for. He is no longer just protecting land. He is defending identity. And identity is far more dangerous to lose than territory. Spencer tries to warn him in his own way. Not with commands, but with stories. Stories of war, of betrayal, of how quickly things can collapse when pride becomes louder than reason. But John is still learning how to listen between the lines. He hears the words, but not always the warning inside them. At the same time, the return of Elizabeth Dutton becomes more than just a rumor. Letters begin to surface, messages carried through distance. The idea that she might return to Montana brings a quiet disruption into the ranch. Because her return is not just emotional, it is structural. It means questions about inheritance, about belonging, about what was left behind and what was taken. Jack's line, now older and more distant from the ranch, also becomes part of the conversation. People begin to wonder who truly holds claim to what. And in the Dutton world, claim is never just a legal word. It is a challenge. Spencer understands this better than anyone. He has seen how families break when legacy becomes a competition instead of a bond. And slowly, he begins to fear that the ranch is heading towards something it may not survive intact. John Dutton II, however, sees something different. He sees pressure, yes, but also purpose. He starts to believe that the only way forward is through strength, through holding the line, no matter what comes. And this belief begins to set him apart from Spencer more and more each day. Between them, something unspoken grows. Not hatred, not love, something more dangerous, difference. Two visions of the same land, moving in opposite directions without realizing how far apart they are becoming. And in the background of all of this, another name quietly begins to surface again. Rainwater. The legacy of old conflicts is never truly gone. It only waits for the right time to return. And in 1969, time feels like it is running out for everyone. The ranch is no longer just a home, it is becoming a test of loyalty, of identity, and of survival. And every man on that land is about to be measured by it. By 1969, the Dutton Ranch is no longer just a place that is lived on. It feels like a place that is constantly being defended. Every sunrise brings a new uncertainty, and every night ends with a sense that something unseen is moving closer. John Dutton II can feel it in the way people talk to him differently now. Not with disrespect, but with calculation, as if they are deciding whether he is strong enough to be challenged. Spencer Dutton senses it too, but his understanding comes from experience, not instinct. He has seen empires collapse from within long before enemies ever arrived. And what he sees now worries him more than any outside threat. Because the real danger is not the land being taken, it is the family slowly turning into strangers under the same name. John tries to hold everything together with discipline. He wakes early, works longer, speaks less. He believes that consistency will keep the ranch stable. But stability is not the same as peace. And peace is something the Dutton Ranch has never truly known. Spencer begins spending more time away from the main house, not out of distance, but out of reflection. He walks the land quietly, sometimes alone for hours, as if trying to speak to something that no longer answers. The weight of Alex's memory is still with him, but now it is joined by something new: regret. Not regret for what he did, but for what time took from him before he could hold on to it longer. In these moments, John sometimes follows him without meaning to, watching from a distance, trying to understand the man who shaped so much of what he now stands on. But Spencer does not always acknowledge him. Not because he is cold, but because some grief does not translate into conversation. The ranch workers begin to notice changes too. Small tensions among families who have worked the land for years. Loyalty is no longer automatic. It is being questioned, tested, reshaped. Some stay because of history. Others stay because they fear what leaving might mean. And fear, once planted, does not stay contained. Talk of other ranches becomes louder. There are movements in nearby territories, negotiations that feel less like discussion and more like positioning. The Dutton name still holds influence, but influence alone cannot stop ambition. And ambition is growing in Montana like dry grass waiting for fire. John is forced into meetings that feel less like agreements and more like silent battles. Every conversation has hidden meaning. Every handshake feels temporary. He begins to understand that leadership is not about speaking loudly. It is about reading what is not said. Spencer warns him again, but softer now. Less instruction, more reflection. He tells him that land does not betray people. People betray land. And when that happens, the land always remembers. John does not fully accept this. Not yet, because he still believes control can prevent collapse. Spencer knows better. Control only delays what is already set in motion. Then, the mention of Elizabeth returning becomes real enough that it cannot be ignored. Her presence is no longer a possibility. It is becoming an expectation. And with her return comes the possibility of her son. A new branch of the Dutton bloodline that could shift everything. This is where silence becomes heavier than conflict. Because no one knows what her arrival will truly bring. Reunion or division. Spencer feels something shift inside him when he hears it confirmed. Not fear, not joy. Something closer to acceptance. As if he already knows that the past is no longer willing to stay buried. John, however, feels something else. Pressure. Not just from the outside world, but from within his own family structure. The idea that the ranch may no longer belong to a single direction begins to unsettle him. And deep within the land itself, there is a growing sense that everything is approaching a breaking point. Not suddenly, slowly, like a storm forming far beyond sight, already deciding where it will land. 1969 is no longer about survival. It is about preparation for what survival will cost. The closer the Dutton family moves toward 1969's turning point, the more the ranch begins to feel like it is holding its breath. Nothing is openly collapsing, yet everything feels fragile, like one wrong word could set the entire structure on fire. John Dutton II starts noticing that even loyalty has begun to look tired. The men who once followed without question now hesitate before they act, as if waiting to see which version of the Dutton future they are supposed to believe in. Spencer Dutton is no longer just a figure of authority on the ranch. He is becoming something else in John's eyes. A warning written in human form. Every story Spencer tells carries a hidden message now, not just about survival, but about what survival destroys. John listens more closely than before, but understanding still feels far away. Because experience cannot be inherited. It must be lived, and often painfully. The ranch itself starts to feel divided in invisible ways, not by fences or borders, but by mindset. One side wants to hold on to tradition, to protect the land as it has always been protected. The other side begins to accept that the world outside is changing too fast for old methods to survive. John leans toward strength and control. Spencer leans toward memory and caution. And between them, the ranch quietly splits into two philosophies. Outside pressure grows sharper. Rival ranches are no longer testing boundaries gently. They are pushing with intention now, sensing that the Duttons are entering a transitional phase. Every weak moment becomes an opportunity. Every hesitation becomes leverage. Montana is no longer just a land of ranches. It is becoming a chessboard, and every move carries consequences. Elizabeth's return becomes more than a family event now. It becomes a structural disruption waiting to happen. Her name alone begins changing conversations. People begin speculating about inheritance, about legitimacy, about what the future Dutton line should look like. The idea of who belongs where becomes dangerous again, like it never fully left. Spencer reacts differently than John expects. He does not resist the idea of her return. Instead, he accepts it with a quiet resignation, as if he understands that some chapters of life do not close. They return with new pages whether you are ready or not. John, however, feels the shift more personally, because Elizabeth's return is not just about family history. It is about balance, about how power might shift within the next generation. And for the first time, John begins to see that the ranch may not always center around his own path. This realization creates something subtle inside him. Not anger, but distance. A growing internal separation between what he feels responsible for and what he might have to give up. Spencer notices this change. He sees how John's decisions are becoming more rigid, how his silence is becoming heavier. And while he does not interfere directly, he begins to worry that John is learning leadership through pressure instead of understanding. And pressure, if it lasts too long, does not create strength. It creates fracture. A quiet moment between them reveals more than words ever could. Spencer speaks less now, but when he does, it is sharper. He tells John that a man can protect land from enemies, but not always from family. John does not respond immediately, but the words stay with him longer than expected. Meanwhile, rumors about Thomas Rainwater's early family history begin resurfacing in subtle ways, connecting old tensions that were never truly resolved. It becomes clear that the past is not just remembered in Montana, it is reused. Every generation inherits not only land, but conflict. The ranch workers begin feeling it too, a sense that something larger is approaching, though no one can define it clearly. It is not violence yet. It is anticipation. The feeling that every conversation could be the last calm one before everything changes. Spencer begins spending more time alone again, not out of isolation, but reflection. He understands something John is still learning, that not all battles are fought against others. Some are fought against time itself, and time always wins differently for everyone. John watches all of this unfold and starts to realize a truth he is not ready to fully accept. The ranch is no longer just being protected. It is being prepared for transition. Whether that transition is peaceful or violent, no one can say yet. And somewhere deep in the silence of Montana, it feels like the land itself already knows what is coming. By the time the final days of 1969 begin to settle over Montana, the Dutton Ranch no longer feels like a place standing in the present. It feels like a place standing between what was and what is about to be lost. Every path, every fence line, every open field carries the weight of decisions that have not yet been made but already feel irreversible. John Dutton II is no longer just reacting to pressure. He is beginning to embody it. The responsibility of the ranch has changed him in ways he does not fully recognize yet. His silence is deeper, his gaze sharper, his patience thinner. Not because he is weaker, but because he is learning that leadership is not comfort. It is constant friction against everything trying to pull it apart. Spencer Dutton, on the other hand, feels time more personally now, not as a concept, but as a force that is slowly finishing its work on him. He does not fear death. What he fears is what remains unfinished. The stories he carries, the lessons he has not fully passed on, the connections that still feel incomplete. The ranch is no longer his future. It is becoming his memory while he is still inside it. Between Spencer and John, something unspoken reaches its final stage of tension. Not conflict, but realization. John begins to understand that Spencer is not just part of the ranch's past. He is the reason the present exists at all. And Spencer begins to see that John is not just the future of the ranch. He is the point where everything must either evolve or break. Elizabeth's return becomes inevitable in conversation, even if she has not yet arrived. Her presence is felt before she steps onto the land. And with her comes the unspoken truth that the Dutton lineage is no longer linear. It is branching, expanding, and becoming harder to define. The question of inheritance stops being about land alone. It becomes about identity. The ranch itself seems to respond to this tension. Work continues, but with less certainty. Men move with more caution. Decisions take longer. Even the air feels heavier, as if the land is absorbing every emotion before it is spoken aloud. Spencer and John share one of their quietest but most meaningful realizations without needing to say it directly. The ranch will not remain the same after this moment in time. It cannot. Something must shift. Something must be redefined. And neither of them is fully in control of what that shift will look like. The idea of conflict with neighboring lands, the rising pressure from outside forces, and the returning weight of old family lines all converge into one silent understanding. Peace was never the destination for the Duttons. It was always a temporary pause between battles. And as 1969 closes in, the final truth settles over the ranch like dust after a storm that has not yet arrived. The legacy of Yellowstone is not being written in victory. It is being written in endurance. Spencer Dutton's story is nearing its final echo. John Dutton II's story is only beginning to harden into legend. And somewhere in between them, the land waits. Knowing that every Dutton generation does not simply inherit Montana, they are tested by it.